So now I get to introduce our featured speaker. As I mentioned, I learned much of that most recent lesson about diversity from my students at the University of Washington's Daniel J. Evans School of Public Policy and Governance, where I have lectured off and on since 2004. The Navy sent me there to the Evans School in the 1970s to get my MPA, that's Master of Public Administration, to build skills in public budgeting, decision-making, cost, benefit, and policy analysis, communications, stakeholder involvement, strategic planning, and organization development. And believe me, I needed all of that and more. As a public sector leader, the Evans School was my professional school. Our speaker today, Dr. Sandy Archibald, has been Dean of the Evans School since 2003. Under her inspiring leadership, our school has risen to the absolute top tier of public policy schools nationally and globally, attracting the very best students from around our state and around the world. The latest U.S. News and World Report rankings, released just last month, ranked the Evans School as 4 out of 272 programs nationwide and number 2 among public universities. That is quite a leap from 26th place when Sandy took the helm. Evans students embrace and reflect their dean's strong belief in the vital importance of civic engagement and good public policy. She sets a bold example, willingly giving her time to serve on countless boards and committees for state, national, and international organizations. She was recognized as the Public Administration Educator of the Year in 2009. Her students arrive on campus committed to careers in government and nonprofit leadership, and they graduate ready to tackle the most daunting social challenges of our age with enthusiasm, skill, compassion, vision, analytic rigor, and practicality. I would like all the Evans School alum, my fellow alum, and current students to please stand and be recognized. Okay. It's a good bunch. Please stay standing if you will. I'd like everyone who has been a guest lecturer at the Evans School or served as a volunteer, advisor, mentor, or board member to also stand and receive our thanks and appreciation. We're very blessed to have the support of those people, aren't we, Sandy? If, like me, you believe that effective public policy, good governance, and strong nonprofit leadership are important, then you should really care about the Evans School. And I know you will join me in welcoming my great friend and sometime boss, Dean Sandy Archibald.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to thank Bill for his kind introduction and his support and dedication to the Evans School over the years. As a teacher in our program, as recipient of the Evans School Outstanding Alumni Award, and long-serving member of the school's advisory board. I just hate following him after a speech. And I want to acknowledge all of the Evans alumni and friends who stood at Bill's request. We appreciate your support, and I invite any of the rest of you in the audience to join us in our drive to improve the effectiveness of public policy and governance in our state. Bill and I are the same age, nearly, and we actually grew up in the 1950s, just 20 minutes away from each other in California's San Fernando Valley. I expect we both probably attended some of those garage bands that shows that Ricky Valens put on in those days. But I have to admit, Bill, that while you were hard at work at the Naval Academy in the 60s, I was at Berkeley, likely causing trouble. Bill, I thank you for sharing with us today your reflections on the growth that you have made in and your appreciation for and championship of diversity. As a Facebook friend, I provide testimony that you're getting much better at listening to different opinions. I would like to thank Rotary for the invitation to speak today, and especially want to thank Rotarian former President Dorothy Bullitt for her role in helping with the arrangements. Dorothy Bullitt, for those of you who don't know, is an outstanding teacher at the Evans School, where she has served as a senior lecturer and distinguished practitioner for over 7 years. She's an award-winning teacher within the school, no surprise, and has been nominated 2 years in a row for the university's Outstanding Teaching Award. Dorothy has played a significant role in helping the Evans School further its diversity initiative. Her work with our students in the classroom has helped them grow into world-ready leaders. And in her leadership of the Evans School Diversity Committee over the last several years, she helped guide conversations among students, staff, and faculty on a broad array of important race and social justice issues. These conversations have led to specific actions and tangible outcomes. My goal in the short time I have is to talk with you about why diversity matters to university leaders across the country today, and why it is that Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the University of Missouri, and you can add UW to that list, to name a few of our fine academic institutions, are in the headlines around incidents of racial tensions on campus, with arguments about assuring free expression on all sides, new calls for fairness of treatment. Why is this happening when there is greater representation of minorities on campus now than at any time? Why is this happening when leaders are consistently espousing diversity as a top priority for their campuses? I will talk a bit about the steps we are taking and need to take to address the pressing issues of race, equity, and inclusion that are on the agenda across the country, and in the context of President Cauce's Race and Equity Initiative at the university. Finally, I hope to suggest a few ways I believe you can help the university, and then I'd like to open the floor and encourage conversation. When my colleagues first asked me to speak on this topic, I demurred. I'm not an expert on race, social justice, or equity theory and policy. My ability to contribute to the conversation is based solely on my 35 years of experience as a faculty member. That was hard to write, actually. With half of that as an administrator, including 12 years as Dean of the Evans School. I approach this topic with great humility. I'm personally committed to increasing diversity in public policy graduate education nationally, and have made it a priority at the Evans School. And we've had some success in enhancing diversity among our students and faculty. Applications for our program over the last 3 years have come from 53 countries and 49 states, including Washington, D.C. For some reason, North Dakota is the only state we've never received an application from. Last year, 24% of our enrolled domestic students were from underrepresented minority groups, and about 18% more were international students. Next year, we're on target to enroll 35% underrepresented minority students and another strong group of international students as well. Our GPA and GRE scores are at the top of the university and exceed those of most of our top peer public policy programs. We are striving to meet our president's goal of access and excellence. On the faculty side, 40% of our tenured and tenure-track faculty are women, and 20% are from underrepresented groups. We're proud of these advances, and we have made in representation, and proud that we are looked to nationally as a model for best practices on how we have approached diversity in our field. We believe we still have a long way to go before we achieve our goal of providing students with an education that prepares them to assume leadership roles in the public and nonprofit sector, in managing people of different races and cultures, and helping to shape social and economic policy that is fair and equitable. But clearly we're making progress, but as you see today, not as fast as many people would like. We've learned a lot and continue to learn about what we need to do to realize the benefits from greater diversity. We've learned that different generations view the diversity issue quite differently, requiring new communication skills on the part of faculty and students. We've learned that the broad definition of diversity embraced by the academy may be leading us to ignore long-standing issues of racial discrimination and bias. We've learned that achieving our goals of getting better decisions from a broadly diverse academic community likely requires us to examine and fundamentally change the way we do business. And we've learned that new leadership skills are necessary to assure success. First, how do we define diversity? Much along the lines that Bill has suggested. Universities have defined diversity in the broadest sense. We believe that diversity matters because we live in an increasingly global and diverse society. Therefore, it is logical that we seek diverse representation within our universities across gender, sexual orientation, race, national and ethnic origin, socioeconomic background, age, and physical ability. We believe that diversity supercharges our academic community, accelerating knowledge generation and creativity. A diversity of backgrounds, experiences, cultural mores, value systems, and personal beliefs helps to inspire new thinking. And we are all convinced that new thinking is needed to solve many of the complex challenges we face in society. To business leaders, diversity is good for business. To university leaders, diversity is good for the world of ideas. For baby boomers like many of us, diversity is also a question of morality. It's the right thing to do, and we're proud that we helped pass laws and ensured compliance of those laws. For millennials, those born between 1980 and 2000 roughly, diversity is a comfortable idea in the traditional sense of the word. They are the most diverse population cohort we have ever had. They embrace diversity and multiculturalism. Many are looking to expand the notion of diversity even more, including greater intellectual diversity. You should be happy with that. This could be good news, but if diversity becomes too broadly defined, it might be difficult to use diversity programs and policies to remedy ongoing historical inequalities and inequities related to class, race, and gender. This seems to be why there is some distress among minority students on campuses across the country who feel strongly that issues of race, discrimination, and equity are being ignored while we celebrate the success we have had in achieving greater diversity. This broad definition of diversity can harm groups traditionally helped by diversity initiatives. There are many professions where racial, ethnic, and gender diversity is still hard to come by. In 2013, only 4% of all U.S. physicians were Black African Americans. Only 3.7% of lawyers were Hispanic, and about an equal percentage of STEM field positions were held by Asians. Women make up only 20% of the workforce in STEM fields. A harsh fact that is true for most of us is our social networks remain largely unchanged. 91% of whites associate only with whites. 83% of blacks largely associate with blacks. And 64% of Hispanics associate with Hispanics, making them the most diverse social group in terms of interactions. Millennials have a reputation for being progressive and forward-thinking. And at the same time, a lot of the institutions that structure their lives have not changed very much. They are aware of this and not afraid to express their opinion about the need for fundamental changes in institutions to bring them more in line with their ideals. This is certainly the case, for example, at Harvard University, where students most recently are asking the university to change the university seal to eliminate reference to the historical legacy of one of its key founders, who as a plantation owner and former slave trader shaped the university. Or with the demand that the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Affairs at Princeton change its name because of Wilson's alleged discriminatory actions as president. These are fundamental changes in longstanding institutions. In both of these cases, the issues are being negotiated to come to a mutual accommodation, but the issue is no less important. How do we reconcile new values with historical legacies? Our notions of diversity continue to evolve, and they are evolving rapidly as we have more experiences with diverse student bodies and faculty. We've learned that representation is not enough. Inclusion is extremely important. People must be welcomed into the academic community, so we are no longer only concerned with ensuring access. Not that we are done with building greater representation, But the focus is now on building a diverse, inclusive academic community to maximize the potential for new ideas. This is not about numbers, but about the transformation of our culture. We need to build a culture and community that reflects and fosters inclusiveness. This has created new challenges and new opportunities related to inclusiveness and requires that we must seek to identify and remove institutional barriers to learning and discovery, to foster creativity and social interactions in new ways if we are to become truly inclusive. It is evident that much of the student unhappiness at the University of Missouri can be traced to beliefs of African American students that they were excluded from student life and culture. A challenge now is how to leverage diversity to achieve this success through inclusive decision-making. Recent research has shown that we can identify what makes people feel included in decision-making, and many of these factors hold up across cultures. Studies have shown that being excluded can impair performance on cognitive tasks, can reduce the ability to problem solve in the face of difficulty, and may reduce creativity. Students, faculty, and employers who continue to feel like outsiders and struggle to connect with coworkers won't perform well. Feeling included is more likely to lead to success in the classroom and innovation on the job, identifying opportunities for new products and processes and trying out new ideas. Feeling included is also more likely to be linked to team citizenship. Good behaviors for teams, innovation, problem solving, have a profound effect on productivity and creativity. So now we ask, what makes people feel included? Some recent research has shown that employees feel included when they perceive that they are both similar to and distinct from their coworkers, uniqueness and belongingness. Two opposing needs of individuals in group settings. What can leaders do to help employees feel included? 4 leadership behaviors have been shown to predict feelings of uniqueness and belongingness, the key ingredients to inclusion. These leadership behaviors are probably not new to many of you. Empowerment, helping people to develop and excel. Humility, admitting mistakes, learning from criticism and different points of view. Courage, putting personal interest aside to achieve what needs to be done. And 4, accountability, demonstrating confidence in those you oversee by holding them responsible for things that they can control. These are 4 attributes of what we call altruistic leadership, largely different from other forms of leadership we've been following. Perceiving altruistic behavior on the part of leaders accounts for nearly half of whether or not employees sense their unique contributions and more than 40% of their feeling of belonging. The changes we have to make now to assure the promise of diversity and assure conclusion are big institutional changes. Diversity is intersecting with new technologies and multi-generational perspectives on race, equity, and class. Last year, after several years of discussion, the UW faculty passed an undergraduate diversity requirement to assure students have at least some exposure to issues related to diversity. We are rethinking how we evaluate teaching in the light of new research that points to systemic bias in student evaluations, and new evidence on how joint scholarship is valued differently when performed by men and women is causing us to rethink how we evaluate scholarship fairly. The leadership agenda set by President Kause in the Race and Diversity Initiative takes on these hard challenges. Building on the university's longstanding commitment to inclusion and social justice, the initiative explores new ways to support and maintain diversity at the UW and in the local, regional, and global communities we serve. The essence of the initiative is threefold. First, to provide an inclusive experience for students that allows for individual development, improving not only their understanding of diverse cultures, but their ability to work in them. Identifying barriers to retaining students and finding ways to make them successful. And second, digging deeply into institutional bias and racism to improve inclusion and fairness. This likely requires us to revise policies that impede our success. And third, where you can come in, engaging communities to help work through the challenges we face and to provide reciprocal learning experience with public and private sector partners. Seattle is one of the top 20 world cities, with the expectation in the next 20 years that we will become even more of a global attraction to employers and employees. King County is already a more diverse and global community than the US on average. 22% of people in the United States are of color. In King County, it's 29%. The US has 13% of its population foreign-born. In King County, it's already more than 20%. And in King County, 25% of people speak a language other than English at home, compared with 20% in the United States. We in Seattle are well known for our economic assets, our tolerance, our culture, our quality of life, our spectacular setting, smart people, and entrepreneurial, innovative mindset. And we have been blessed with city stewards like yourself. We operate in a global, complex, interconnected world, competing in this context for high-skilled labor, ideas, and capital. We want to continue to attract the best and the brightest to come to work and live here. A vibrant, inclusive community where we see greater racial and social equity can be that magnet. Helping Seattle achieve its potential to become a vibrant and inclusive community drives our diversity initiative at the Evans School. What can you do to help? We need the help of our community if we are to achieve our goals. We know that women and minority students are more likely to stay engaged in STEM disciplines if they have the opportunity to engage in real problem solving. Your mentorship program with business school undergraduates is an outstanding example. Other opportunities for experiential education, such as internships, are always available to engage our students. We encourage you to reach in, come to class, meet our students, and speak to them about your own experiences managing diverse workforces, discussing both successes and failures. Attend public events, speeches, and lectures, including many of those sponsored by the Evans School. Become our partner. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon, and I invite your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, and congratulations on the progress you are making with the student body. My question relates to diversity among faculty. Recent studies have indicated that 90% or more of university faculties self-identify as left of center. Doesn't that mean that a diversity of ideas from conservative or libertarian faculty is missing from the dialogue at the university, and what can be done to fix that?
Thank you. That's a really good question, and one that we have to deal with directly. Being an economist, we probably have most of those other 5% in our field. But encouraging new ideas when we don't have full representation among the faculty has been challenging in the classroom. Bill and Dorothy can probably tell you, but we have to work hard to structure that diversity of opinion and manufacture it when it's not there. Asking people to take different sides of arguments, asking them to take a different position. But for me, it's just a matter of educating people that the world of ideas isn't reserved for one political philosophy. It's a challenge, and we work on it all the time.
We have another question over here.
Well, again, thank you for being here. You know, my question deals with this morning's newspaper and the article about the 200 students that took over the meeting last night that was really about diversity on campus. My question is, were those students uninformed, or how do you go about addressing that issue on campus today?
So we spent a couple of hours talking about that topic this morning. And students like progress. They like to see action. Part of our diversity plan, one reason it's been successful at the Evans School, is because we recognize that some of these are long-term generational transitions. Faculty only turn over about every 35 years. You don't have the opportunity to replace them on a regular routine basis. Students don't see that now at the Evans School we have 40% women faculty or 20% minority faculty. They want to see more progress. So part of the effort that we have to do is to show progress in the time frame when students are here. And that can be a range of activities, from letting them get engaged in policy problems, taking seriously some of the issues that they're raising, that they raised in this demonstration yesterday, and that bothers them that we still continue to buy our university furniture from prisons, where they feel that there's a cycle of institutional racism. So some of the issues they bring are issues that we should be addressing. But I think we have to balance the long-term solutions to these issues with short-term steps and progress. And that's something that we as deans decided today we hadn't done well enough.
Thank you for joining us today. Admiral Bill has brought visiting guests who I believe were studying from overseas at the Evans School. Can you comment a little bit more about that program and how they bring diversity and tolerance messages back to the countries in which they come from?
Yes, you're speaking of the Hubert H. Humphrey Fellows Program, which we had at the University of Washington for 26 years. Before that, when I was at the University of Minnesota, we hosted them as well. It was a very good mechanism for bringing young leaders to urban environment in Washington and having them interact with many of you and many of the leaders in our community. It did bring reality and diversity home. Unfortunately, the State Department has cut that program, so it's now being folded into the Fulbright Fellowship Program, but we are trying to bid on the African Fellows Program, so we're hoping that we can replace the Humphrey Group with another crop of likely leaders coming in the next year or two. It was a wonderful way to bring diversity.
We have another question over here.
You're doing a great job of educating leaders that are probably on the executional side of the public policy. How can you address the divergence of public debate, especially around the presidential candidate, where thoughtfulness and reason seems to have evaporated completely?
Oh, you're asking me to step into that political mess. I think the people will do a pretty good job of settling that out when they go to the ballot box. I'm confident that they're going to be demanding a lot more accountability and a lot more reasonableness from the discourse as we go forward in the next 6 months. That's my optimistic viewpoint. No one wants to be a political leader these days. It's intrusive in your life, it's difficult, it's not well paid. I try very hard, where's Lauren? I try to get all of my students to consider public elected office. I think it's very important that we put the best and the brightest into these positions, and then we have to support them. We can't just back away when somebody does step into one of these difficult positions. We need to provide them with the support that they need. But I am baffled. Politics is my passionate hobby, and I have watched so much of it that I guess I can last for the next 6 months. But it's a very serious issue. I don't have an answer, I'm sorry.
And to your right?
Thank you. You made the comment that we're going to try our best to combine the history with, the best way to get at this. Let's say you're Germany, and there was a guy named Adolf Hitler took over and was the worst leader that's ever walked the face of the earth. Do you change the name of Germany to another name? I'm a graduate of Whitman College, okay?
Yes.
And we have this exact discussion going on. They want to change the name of the college newspaper, which it's been forever, the Whitman College Pioneer, which is where I started writing, okay? Because some students think there's a negative connotation to pioneer, okay? The second one is the college was named after the missionaries, and one of the most heartening diversity issues there is Narcissa Whitman was the first woman to cross the Oregon Trail in 1835, right? A fantastic accomplishment for a 16-year-old woman that went to the mission field. So it was named after missionaries, and the school's moniker is the Fighting Missionaries, which is a bit of an oxymoron, kind of like demon deacons. Okay, so my point is, where does letting the prisoners run the prison get to be stupidity?
So, Woodrow Wilson, the Princeton just did, if you have been following what's been going on at Princeton, I think they had a very rational, good process and a good outcome. They appointed a task force, a good solution, Seattle solution, to look at, put Woodrow Wilson's contributions into the context in which they were made. And the university decided decisively not to change the name of the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Affairs. They stood their ground, and they've come to an accommodation in that they have said, this is the context in which these decisions were made, and just provided transparency and historical perspective. So we're struggling. We're all working our way through this right now. I don't have a good answer of when you say, no, we're not going to do that, and when you listen and you find a middle path to it. But you can't recreate it. I mean, you are living in the time you're living in. And shining a light on that for young people means to me they haven't had enough history. And being a history major, I think it's really important that we put a lot of these things in perspective. You can't go back and recreate the past. You can shine a light on it and say, as Princeton did, this is not the values of the contemporaneous Princetonian, but it is the way that decisions were made. I don't have any other answer. I'm an honest, plain speaker. Thank you. Oh, one more?
Do we have time for one more?
How do you deal with situations where there's a divergence of view, but not a divergence of facts? And I think of things like global warming or the age of the universe.
I'm glad I'm not a geologist or an earth scientist. So I think the divergence of facts issue is very difficult, and it's what policy people work on all the time. If you know, Bill Ruckelshaus has spent his career after he stepped down as director of the Environmental Protection Agency trying to get people to come to agreement about what the facts are. And people bring their own biases and their own lens to facts, and we need to sit down and as collectively, collaboratively, look and agree on the facts. Otherwise, we'll use them to drive us apart forever. And I think if you look at the Ruckelshaus Center on Collaborative Governance, they've done a wonderful job in helping us through some difficult environmental issues with just that, bringing reasonable people to the table around diverging opinions about what the facts are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Dorothy. I think we got a little snippet of what it's like to be in Dorothy's class, which was my wish last week. Admiral Bill, thank you as well. It's so nice to have you back on the podium, and the genuineness that you bring is so appreciated. I recently learned that Rotary International's exchange student program was founded in my hometown. Gavin Pilkington was our family's first exchange student. He brought Finnish dance into our home. Suzanne, a Swedish model, wore men's t-shirts as dresses, teaching me fashion is creative expression. Angie Hurrah, whose family owned half of the Philippines, discovered she quite liked household chores. Most endearing to me was Adi Asanatha Thau Thau from Fiji. She graciously suggested I call her Shane. My father warned me that in Fijian culture, people respond to compliments by gifting those items. This made me extremely curious and complimentary. My dad made me return her gold watch. Shane went on to become the Minister of Women in Fiji. She came back to our hometown, Forest Grove, Oregon, to thank my family for our part. Stretching beyond familiar expands and connects us. Unfamiliar can be unsettling. Unsettling can be good. See you next week.